Lost Art with Andrew Cox, retired Master Gunnery Sergeant. thelostart.podbean.com. Get some merchandise and help support the podcast in getting our veteran voices out for all to hear. Now on all major podcast platforms. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Be a guest, tell your veteran story, discuss your veteran business or organization. Email The Lost Art with Andrew Cox at gmail.com. Andrew Cox, a Till Valhalla Project Ambassador. See the project story at tillvalhallaproject.com. Thanks for tuning in. Please enjoy the podcast that's giving a voice to our veterans. The Lost Art with Andrew Cox.
Today's episode is brought to you by TrumpShirt.com. TrumpShirt.com is a veteran-owned business where 100% of the proceeds goes to disabled veterans and veteran organizations. Support your veterans by purchasing a shirt at TrumpShirt.com. Use the promo code TLA and get free shipping. That's TrumpShirt.com, promo code TLA.
Hello, my friends, and welcome back to the Lost Art Podcast. That podcast is giving a voice to our veterans. I'm your host, Andrew Cox, and today we'll be having a My Veteran Story. But before we get into the episode or you enjoying the podcast, go to our website. That's thelostart.podbean.com. Go check us out, see what we got going on. Don't forget there's a merchandise tab in there. Go click on that, get your cool hat, shirt, something like that. Help support us in getting our veteran voices out for all to hear. Also, I want to give a shout out to the Till Valhalla Project and allowing me to be an ambassador for their amazing organization. If you haven't checked them out, please do so. tillvalhallaproject.com. Go check them out, see what they got going on, and see what you can do to help them out in their mission.
And one of the things that was part of our responsibilities is we provide security for like supply runs.
Yeah.
So supply runs would, go from Bob Warhorse, which was like the big, it's like Balad and Warhorse and then our little Bob. So we would do that, twice a month or 3 times a month. We would provide security. And we're coming back one. And I was in the gunner seat of one of our vehicles. And we had like the RWS, like it's all camera operated. So it's like playing a video game for your 50 cal.
Okay.
You've got a joystick and it's got night vision cameras and everything, and it moves the 50 cal. So you really don't have to be outside of the vehicle if you don't want to. And we did it because, guys were getting hit by IEDs and stuff.
Right. Yeah.
So, I'm sitting there on the joystick, scanning, doing all this stuff. And, we're dozing. It's late. It's like 1 o'clock in the morning. And there's a Humvee in front of us. And I hear a boom and I see light. And I'm like, man, what was that? And it didn't click immediately.
Yeah.
And then I start smelling gunpowder. And I'm like, oh. And I hear the radio call up like, hey, the Humvee in front of us got hit by an IED.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah.
And we're like, okay, the first things you start doing is you're like, what are we going to do? Is there damage to the vehicle? Can we push through? Do we have to stop? What are we doing? So they're like, hey, we're just going to push through. We're like 20 minutes from the fob at this point.
Oh, wow.
So we're like, we're just going to push through. We're going to gun it back. And so that's what we did. We just gunned it back. And we get back. Everybody's good. They take like statements from everybody. Right. And the next day, EOD goes out and they look at it. And they're like, yeah, it was like smaller IED, homemade explosives with like ball bearings, shrapnel.
So the Humvee was able to drive back.
Yeah, Humvee was able to drive back. In fact, I think what we found out later was they weren't even trying to get us. They were trying to get the mayor of the village who was supposed to be going down that same road.
Oh, no.
Later. So he would have been in like a soft shell vehicle.
Yeah.
So they hit us by accident. And that was like really the most action that I really saw.
Oh, no kidding.
One IED, man.
Yeah.
So, a month later, they come out and they're like, hey, man, you're getting a CIB, which is the combat infantryman.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, for that?
Wow.
Okay, if you guys want to give it to me, like,
yeah, I'm not going to turn it down.
I'll take the uniform candy,
Yeah.
And we had like a couple rocket attacks on our fob and like indirect, but the deployment was super chill. And I'm thankful for that looking back on it now. But
there's always a part of you. Right?
There's that ego, young kid guy where you want to prove yourself. Right?
Yeah.
You want to go out and you want to like kick indoors and shoot people in the face. It's what you've been training to do for the last however many years.
Yeah. It's kind of like you were saying a second ago, you're that backup quarterback.
Yeah.
And you've been training, and then it's like, yeah, Yeah.
Which I get it. That's a tough pill to swallow.
And so, all of us felt that way.
Mm-hmm.
Looking at it now as a 36-year-old adult, I'm like, man, what we did over there was probably more impactful.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Than if we were getting in firefights every single day and just stacking bodies.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's great. That is what it is,
Yeah.
But the work that we did over there in that year, and actually, like, let's fast forward a little bit. Like, we do this every day, and our deployment gets cut short. We're there 10 months, and they're like, all right, we're going home. We're going to close down this fob.
Wow.
So we're like, all right. And so then we transition into, shutting this fob down. We're sending stuff back to the States. We're sending it to other fobs. And we're getting ready to turn it over to the Iraqi Army.
Wow.
Yeah.
Holy cow. And did you actually end up doing that?
Yeah.
No kidding.
Whole fob over to the Iraqi Army.
Wow.
And there was a National Guard SF unit. There was embedded with the Iraqi Special Forces unit, kind of like right next door to our fob.
Yeah.
And so I was lucky enough to get to talk with those guys, and we would go out and support them on missions and stuff. And we had a couple times where we'd go support 275 Rangers. They'd come out and they'd be like, hey, we're after this HVT, you guys are gonna back us up. But it was really just a lot of cordoning areas, doing stuff like that.
Yeah. Wow. And it was 10 months total that you were there.
10 months total. Yep.
Yeah. All right. So you're getting ready to come back. You shut down the fob, turned it over to the Iraqis, and then what was the redeployment like?
So after we turned over the fob, we went out to it was a Marine base, and I don't remember which one it was. We were there for a little bit, and we were kind of bouncing back and forth between fobs, making our way back.
Yeah.
And we finally get to another base, Al Assad, and we're in Al Assad, and we're there for a couple a week, and they've got
which again is one of those gigantic
huge
bases. Yeah.
And that's even more of a culture shock because everybody's there. You got Air Force, Marines, Navy, Army, and we're in these little tents next to this Air Force unit.
Yeah.
And we roll in, and we're all crusty, dirty infantry guys.
Yeah.
And the Air Force general that's in charge of this unit comes out, and we have a big formation. And he's like, all right, I know you guys. I know you're all infantry guys.
Yeah.
All male unit. You're not allowed to talk to my female airmen. You are not allowed to be within 10 feet of my female airmen. You are not allowed to look at them.
Yeah.
Nothing.
Yeah.
And so you're out here. We're at this base. They've got steak, lobster, Burger King, Pizza Hut, the whole thing. And we're watching all these female airmen running around doing PT in the morning. And we're looking at each other this is what we've been missing out on?
This could have been it.
And I remember going, man, I joined the Army.
Yeah. You were in Air Force ROTC.
I should have known better, man. But I wouldn't trade any of it for the world. It was a good time. And, we come home.
That's awesome.
I remember being on the phone with my wife, telling her, hey, we're getting ready to come home. And I'm in the back of my mind is still that day when I came home from leave and I looked at my son.
Oh, yeah.
Freaked out. And I'm like, hey, we're landing at 6 a.m. At now Joint Base Lewis McChord, because Ford and Fort Lewis merge and they become one of these joint base. I'm like, we're landing at 6 a.m. Don't get the kids up.
Yeah.
Just come out, pick me up. I want to do nothing more than stop at the shopette and get a 12-pack of Bud Light and come home and sleep for 4 days.
Yeah.
Please, for the love of God, do not bring the kids out because I don't want to deal with that.
Yeah.
She doesn't listen to me. Pulls the kids out of bed at 6 a.m. They all come out, and the kids are freaking going ballistic.
Yeah.
New 6-month-old baby, 2-year-old kid. And there's the band playing when we march in and all this stuff. And it's a mess because all your gear gets dumped. And so you're digging through all these sea bags trying to find your bag. Meanwhile, my wife and kids are sitting there and the kids are screaming. And it's just I don't want to do this.
I just want to go home. That was almost more stress dealing with that.
Right? Yeah. And in the back of your head, you're
I looked at it as I was like, we should still be over there.
Yeah.
Like there's still more that we should be doing, but we got pulled out early because of the political climate. And Iraq is slowing down, closing down FOB, all this stuff. And I'm like, man, we should still be there. Kids are screaming in my ear. Wife is yelling at me because I can't find my bag fast enough.
Yeah.
Trying to like say goodbye to all my boys because it's gonna be. We had like a week, and not great.
Yeah, it's tough.
It's tough.
Yeah. I didn't have any kids when I came home, so I was lucky. It's just like we got to go, but I could definitely see, having kids now. I can't even imagine being separated from them, I'll be honest.
Yeah.
And it's amazing that individuals like you that went through that, right? And that's tough.
And then there's also a part of me that's thinking about my boys, like my buddies, and I'm like, man, they are going back to an empty barrack room. They have one set of civilian clothes that we threw in the bottom of our sea bags.
Yeah.
Who knows what those barrack rooms are going to look like? There's probably minimal furniture in there. There's no food. There's no drinks. It's 6 a.m.
Yeah.
The class 6 isn't even open for us to go get beer.
Yeah.
No chow hall is open. It's like a Saturday morning. And so I'm worried about my guys. Like, what are these guys doing?
Yeah.
And so all of that stuff is kind of living simultaneously in my brain. It was stressful.
Wow. Now, how did you kind of overcome that? Like, what did you
do? I don't know if I did. It was really just like, hey, wife wants to do this, we're doing this. You kind of fall back into that pattern.
Right.
And so, I'd be calling and texting my boys like, hey, what are you guys doing? You guys good? You need anything? And then you go back to work.
Yeah.
So then you're going back into it. It's still a pretty chill schedule. Like we're reacclimating, going and talking to mental health. We're doing like cognitive tests to make sure that our brains aren't all screwed up and stuff.
Yeah. That's an improvement from the time I deployed to when you guys did at that point. But when I came back, it was like hey, if there's something wrong, we'll talk to the chaps. Other than that was it. We didn't get anything else.
I think the Army was trying. They were trying to, and probably the whole Department of Defense.
Oh, yeah.
Just like at this point, veteran suicide was a problem.
Oh, yeah.
Guys are getting divorced. And I think the Department of Defense is like, we have to figure out a way to do something.
Yeah.
And so I remember before we deployed, like we did like this computer cognitive test.
Okay.
You come back, and after you've been back for like a week, you do the same test, and they compare your results and stuff. Make sure that you don't have like TBI or anything like that.
Interesting.
But I had a horrible time sleeping when I came home. And at first I'm like, my brain is still on Iraq.
Right.
And it would I could not sleep.
Wow.
And so I remember finally going and talking to mental health. And people like,
yeah.
I see mental health. And they're like, you want to see mental health? And I'm like,
yeah.
Bring that down a notch, man. And at that point, I can see the end of my initial contract. And so I'm like doing the whole, am I or am I not thing. And I'm looking at my family and I'm looking at the deployment and I'm like, okay, are we even going to deploy again? Like what? Comparing and contrasting all these things and trying to deal with the stuff that I brought home.
Yeah.
And, one of those things, even with not seeing, combat every single day, the Brandon that went to Iraq is not the Brandon that came home. And I was actually just talking about this with a coworker here that was a Marine, and she even said the same thing. She's like, what? Like, why is that? And so it's a puzzle piece that we have to try and figure out.
Yeah.
So I'm dealing with all of these things, and I'm thinking about reenlisting, and maybe I'll change up. Wife doesn't want to do another deployment, and straight up told me like, if you deploy again, I'm out.
Yeah.
Taking the kids, I'm out. And I'm like, well, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
I watch guys that I deployed with, one of my best friends still to this day, his wife left him, took everything.
Yeah.
And I saw what that did to him. And I'm like, I am not doing that.
Yeah.
So came back in 2010. My ETS date is like January 1st, 2012.
Okay.
So I know, like, okay, it's still a little while, it's still a little ways out. It's something to start thinking about. And then you just get into the swing of things again. It's the Army.
Yeah.
You're training for the next deployment. You're training. Then we have new guys coming to us.
Yeah. Having to train.
You're the senior guy that they're looking at. Now I'm a specialist. I'm an E4. And, you know, I go to WLC, which is the Warrior Leaders Course. It's like the basic NCO Academy.
Yep.
So when they start looking at like senior E4s that might go to E5, they send you to this academy.
Yeah.
And so I go do that, and I'm still like doing this whole dance around like, what am I going to do? Also trying to be a husband, trying to be a dad, marriage.
Still really learning how to do that, right? Yeah.
And I'm only, 22 at this time. I turned 21 when I was in Iraq.
Yeah.
That is still really young.
Yeah, it is.
It's not my first rodeo. It's my second rodeo, but that is still a really small number of rodeos.
Yeah.
And so, I'm trying to figure it all out, man.
Yeah.
And it's not easy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It weighs heavily on you too, but so as you're trying to figure all that out, you're pushing forward. Like, what was the next steps? Like, what'd you end up doing?
You're still there training. You're doing all this stuff. You're teaching up the new guys. You're still training. And then they're like, hey, another deployment coming up. Afghanistan.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And, the world is still going on around you. You're not, just because you're in the military doesn't mean you're outside of everything that's going on in the world.
Yeah.
So Afghanistan deployment sitting on the horizon, and now it's really like we're mid 2011, and it is go or no go time for if I'm going to re-enlist or not.
Yeah.
And I had really kicked around like changing my MOS, and I was like, okay, now I want to do something that can give me some experience on that.
Right.
What's that look like? What are the bonuses like? Would I have to PCS? Would I have to go somewhere else? How do I do that? How do I improve my family? And eventually I settle on like, okay, I'm going to get out. And as soon as I said, I'm getting out, I'm not deploying, my unit's like, all right, we're sending you to be like a training NCO for all the new soldiers that are coming to Joint Base Elizabeth Forward. Right. So new soldiers come in, whether they're fresh out of basic or they're PCSing, and you are really like, I played babysitter for 6 months.
Yeah.
And it was fantastic. I was home by 2:00 every day.
Yeah.
I got fat. I didn't do PT in the morning. Like,
You were on your own program.
I was on my own program. I had one E6 that was like my squad leader, and he was like, I do not care what you guys do.
Yeah.
As long as you get your job done.
Yeah.
And that was my first taste of that.
Yeah.
And a lot of the people in the unit that I worked with they call it AGM. So they're in the National Guard, but they're on active orders.
Okay.
So they're full time, but they're National Guard. They're not active. And so I'm like, man, maybe I do something like this.
Yeah.
And so then I start looking at the National Guard. I start looking at the reserves. But again, the wife is back there going like, hey, I really want to be done with the military lifestyle.
Yeah.
This is not what I signed up for. And I'm like, are you sure? Because I was in when we got married. So it's not like this should have been a shot.
Yeah.
But eventually I decided like, okay.
Yeah.
And the Army does a fantastic job of taking people and turning them into soldiers. They do not do a great job of taking soldiers and turning them into civilians.
Yeah.
So it was the program as you're getting out is called like ACAP. You're ACAPing. So you've got appointments. You have to go like learn how to do a resume, all this stuff.
Right.
And it is trash.
Yeah.
It is a check the box thing for the Army to be like, well, we tried.
Yeah. We trained you.
Yeah.
We gave you the resources.
But one thing I've learned too is, and this is going to be an unpopular statement.
That's okay.
Veterans are entitled.
Yeah.
Veterans are entitled. I get out of the Army and I'm like, people are going to be begging to hire me.
Yeah.
Because I have this experience and I served and I was in charge of millions of dollars of equipment. You know, this one striker is like $2 million or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm like, people are going to be banging down my door to hire me.
Not necessarily the case.
Not the case. I'm like, no issues, babe. Wife, don't worry. Work is going to just We're
It's
good.
gonna fall on my lap.
We're good.
Yeah.
I was not good. As an infantryman, there's not a lot of civilian jobs where they're like, hey, we need you to kick in somebody's door and shoot them in the face.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, like, if nothing else, I will go be a cop.
Yeah.
Last fallback solution. I go, I do all the testing for Pierce County Sheriff. I'm not even in the top 10%. And I'm looking, and there are 100 other guys just like me.
Yeah.
And then you've got other cops that are already certified, already know what they're doing, coming into Tacoma because it's better pay, better benefits. And I'm like, okay, we might have a problem.
Yeah.
So then I go test for like Tacoma Fire. Tacoma Fire Department is the second best fire department pay-wise in the country, second only to New York Fire Department.
Oh, no kidding.
There were people from all over the country coming in to test for the Tacoma Fire Department. They did it at the freaking Tacoma Dome. That's how many people, and if nobody has ever seen the Tacoma Dome, it's like AT&T Stadium here.
Yeah, it's huge.
Yeah. Madonna sells out, Tacoma Dome. And I remember walking in there and I'm like, oh, this is not good. And I'm like talking with guys, like a fire chief at, Bumfuck, Iowa Fire Department.
Yeah.
Who's like, I would kill an infinite amount of people just to get an entry level job here.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh boy. Shockingly, don't get the call back for Tacoma Fire. And now I'm like,
what do I do?
Whoops.
Yeah.
And so, Army vet Brandon, combat deployment, all this responsibility, all this stuff. I end up working security at a shopping mall in downtown Seattle.
Wow.
For like $12 an hour.
No kidding.
Can't pay the bills.
Yeah.
Can't make ends meet. All that job security, all that food security, all that medical security from the military, gone.
Yeah. Wow.
And then I'm like, do I go back in? And wife is like, absolutely not. Out if you do that. So then I'm really like, okay, what am I doing?
Yeah.
23, 24 years old, family, kids. And now you're like thrown to the wolves in the sense of like, there's no training wheels.
Yeah.
It is baptism by fire.
Yeah.
And you either figure it out or you don't.
Mm-hmm.
And there is no failure. You've got 3 mouths to feed at home. And so I'm scrounging, man. I'm in panic mode. And I'm like, I'll take the first job I find that says yes.
Yeah.
And it's working like part-time security at a mall in freaking Seattle for $12 an hour.
That's tough. Mm-hmm. But you're 100% right. And this has come up on multiple podcasts, but that whole entitlement type of thing, right? Oh, yeah, people are knocking down the doors for military folks. Yeah, they may want military folks. That's true, but they're not knocking down doors. You have to go out and figure out, have a niche and be able to survive.
You have to have the skills.
Yeah.
And I think that's one thing that veterans struggle with is like, they don't know how those skills carry over to the civilian sector. Right. A lot of times they just don't. Mm-hmm. They just don't.
Yeah.
So, I'm doing that. And then, I see it's like Christmas time, 2012 probably. And I see like an ad for FedEx drivers. And I'm like, well, I was a driver in the military. So I could probably go drive a truck for FedEx boxes. And so I apply.
Yeah.
And luckily, saving grace, man, like I get this job.
Yeah.
Working for FedEx, driving, and it's great.
Mm-hmm.
401k, medical, dental, good pay. And I do that for a little while. And then, at this point, still marriage on the rocks.
Yeah.
And my wife is like, I want to go to California. That's where her mom is. That's where my family is. And I'm like, oh, I don't know how we're going to do that.
Yeah.
So we kind of drop everything and we move to California and we move in with her mom.
Wow. Okay.
Into a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom, 800 square foot house in Long Beach.
Wow.
With 5 people in there, 6 people, because her mom and grandma live together.
Oh.
bouncing back and forth from her mom to my parents' house. I'm trying to find work, and it's just not happening.
Yeah.
And stupid me, I haven't applied for any disability, nothing.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So we're there for a couple months, and I'm like, look, I really want to get out. I cannot do this.
Mm-hmm.
So we look at moving back to the Pacific Northwest, and I find another FedEx job in Portland. Apply, get it, and I'm like, hey, you know, we're in California. Give me a couple weeks. We'll move up there. So we move into Vancouver, Washington, which is right on the Washington side of the river. And I would commute back and forth to Portland, drive, and I loved it, man.
Yeah.
I loved that job. I was so good at it because it's a schedule, it's a process, it's the same. You know, I did businesses. I would go to the same business every day, drop off their boxes. It's just the same thing.
Yeah, the routine of it.
The routine,
just like military. Right?
And I loved it, man. And I was so good at it. Started just driving, kind of worked my way up to like an assistant manager, and then, you know, marriage still on the rocks. We had a miscarriage. And that was like that was the beginning of the end of my marriage.
Right.
And so we're like, okay, we need to get out of here. There's like a lot of, you know, bad vibes, bad memories. We need a fresh start. So we're like, let's move back to like Tacoma. Find another FedEx job up there, move up there. We're there, we're working. I get laid off. And I'm like, okay, what now?
Yeah.
I don't know what to do. So from there, I'm like, okay, what am I good at? What are some things that I can? And I'm like, you know what? It's time for me to start going back to school. So I start working on my bachelor's degree.
Okay.
Kind of like hybrid online, half on campus. And now I'm getting that like
the E5.
BAH.
Yeah.
So I'm getting money at least coming in from the VA to go to school. And I'm going to school. And then I start working at doing security for Boeing.
Okay.
And so I'm doing that, pretty good money for security.
And you're doing that while
I'm going to school.
Okay.
So graduate, get my bachelor's degree, and I'm like, okay, my bachelor's degree is in marketing. I really want to find a way to use this. So I get an internship while I'm still working full time for a local fight promotion company up there. They put on MMA and boxing fights in Tacoma, and they had fighters that had gone to the UFC and like were professional boxers. So I'm like, this is a great chance for me, unpaid internship.
Yeah.
And so I do that for a couple months, and I actually like quit my job. And I'm like, I'm just going to put all my beans into this.
Yeah.
And see if I can make this work. And it doesn't turn into anything. And I'm like, well, shit.
Yeah.
So I go back to FedEx again. And I start driving for FedEx again. And again, really good at it. Routine. Start as a driver, and then I become like the assistant manager.
Okay.
At this point, my wife and I are like, hey, we're in call quits.
Yeah.
We're living in a 3-story townhouse. So I remember coming home from work one day, and she's like, I don't want to do this anymore. I think it's time for me to move into the guest room. And I'm like, all right, if that's what you want, but your furniture is really heavy. So I'm going to carry it down to the guest room. But once it's down there, it don't come back up. And she was like, I'm good with that.
Wow.
And I'm like, all right. And so she moves down to the guest room. She starts working on trying to figure out where she's going to go. And this is 2018. So we split.
Yeah.
And she takes the kids and she moves back down to Vancouver. She's got some family down there. And I move into a 2-bedroom condo, and that's that, man.
Yeah.
That's all she wrote.
Yeah. That's tough, man. How did you take all that?
I dealt with it like any red-blooded 29-year-old ex-infantryman. I threw myself into the dating community.
Yeah.
I drank a lot.
Yeah.
And I started mingling with the single female demographic.
Okay.
And I became just a human dumpster fire.
Yeah.
So we get divorced, and she's still down in Vancouver. I'm up here. And at this point, I became like the manager for our division.
Oh, wow.
So
Okay.
I'm really not in a truck anymore. I'm more in an office. Like sometimes I still like to get on a truck. I like to go out and do the job. And I give like drivers like, hey, I'm going to take a route.
Yeah.
Spend time with the family. So I have my kids every other weekend. So I'm not seeing my kids a whole lot.
Right.
I'm depressed.
Mm-hmm.
I start dating this girl. We date for 8 months. We break up because I'm a trash bag human being at that time.
Right. Okay.
And that hit me hard, man.
Yeah.
I'm like, I have nobody. I had put myself in like this seclusion.
Yeah.
I had no community. I had no support. I had no friends.
Mm-hmm.
This girl and I break up, and now I'm just sitting at home by myself every day.
Yeah.
And I went off the rails.
Mm.
I went off the rails.
Wow.
Ended up in a 48-hour psych hold in a hospital.
No kidding. Wow.
I went crazy. I was an alcoholic.
Mm-hmm.
I was doing a lot of substances that I shouldn't have been doing.
Yeah.
I was depressed, dealing with PTSD, anxiety, depression.
Yeah.
And I was a shit show.
Mm-hmm.
And then I finally started plugging myself into some online veteran.
Oh, nice. Okay.
And I started to make friends. And my best friend still to this day, he's another Army vet. And him and I had met when I was dating this girl. Hated each other.
Oh, okay.
Because I was a piece of shit.
Yeah, yeah.
Met up again at this veterans meetup, and we're like, "Are you drinking Rainier beer?" He's like, "Yeah." So am I. Here, I got a couple extra. Have one. And that was best friends now for the rest of our life.
No kidding.
And I started to realize the thing that everybody told me: do not seclude yourself. Don't.
Yeah.
You have to find your tribe. You have to find your community.
Mm-hmm.
And so I really started to lean into that, and I dug more into finding my people. They didn't necessarily have to be veterans, but like-minded people who shared the same life experiences and the same passions and the same loves that I had. And that is when I started to see the turnaround on my life. And I went from a guy who was going upstairs, my wife would fall asleep, and then I had a credit card my wife didn't know about that I would buy booze on. And I would keep a handle of vodka under my bed, and I would drink myself to sleep every night.
Wow.
Wake up, either still drunk or hungover, and go to work.
Yeah.
And I started to transition out of that. And I started to find like, hey, there's this veteran community out there that's full of great, amazing people.
Right.
And I made friends, and I made connections, and I networked. I was still a shit show, but I was in my community. I was finding my tribe.
Yeah, yeah. So, but you were working on yourself.
Yeah, I was working,
and you were working for him.
Yeah, yeah. And so at that time, I started to go to the VA. I started to do therapy and counseling. And the VA they're like, all right, we're going to give you 40% disability, and I'm like, dope.
Yeah.
But I always felt really guilty about taking disability, and I was like, no, I've got all 10 digits. I got all my feet, hands, everything. Like, this money could be better spent on other veterans that are disabled. And I was talking with a buddy of mine. He was my old first sergeant, and we actually ended up working together at Boeing.
Okay.
And then he went on to become like a rep for the VA and help people do all their disability stuff. And he told me, he's like, hey man, just because you're taking this money, this disability, does not mean you're taking it out of the pocket of another veteran.
Absolutely.
There is money there, and you deserve it. He's like, you might look at yourself in the mirror and say like, well, I'm all put together, but start to peel those layers back and say, am I really put together?
Yeah.
And so I was like, all right, like I've got disability for my hearing loss and like my knees, but maybe I need to like do some stuff with that. And so I started going to therapy, and I remember my therapist was like the head of the mental health department for the VA.
Oh yeah.
And one day he's like, hey man, I want you to go see this civilian part of your disability claim. And so I went and I saw the civilian therapist for an hour after work. And it was like, again, it was mostly for my disability, part of the process for that. And by the time I left that woman's office, she is bawling her eyes out. And I'm like, broke the doctor.
Bonus.
Yay. And so, my disability got kicked up, and now I've got money, and I've got a good, solid, like, career job. And I'm like, man, this is great.
Yeah.
And then I get laid off because COVID hits.
Oh, God, man. That messed up so many people.
It screwed up so many things.
Yeah.
So I get laid off from there, and I'm like, all right, I could live off of like unemployment and disability. And I did for a little while, but then I saw myself drinking more. I'm doing all the things that I know I should not be doing.
Kind of falling back into the same rut. Yeah.
Falling back into it. I'd stay up till 4 o'clock in the morning drinking, playing video games, wasting my life, just sitting on the couch.
Right.
So my best friend, he's like, hey man, he does sheet metal.
Okay.
So he was in the union. He was working on becoming a journeyman. So he's an apprentice. He's like, hey, I know that this isn't exactly what you want to do, but you're really good with like logistics and stuff. And there's like like pretty much like their lead logistic guy for the place that he works at. This position just opened up. And so I applied for it and I get it. And so I'm running all their shipping and receiving and shipping out products and all this stuff. And it's great, but it wasn't what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And I think everybody kind of knew it. So I did it for a year, get laid off again. They let a bunch of people go. And I'm like, all right, what now?
Yeah.
And so right before I got laid off, we had all my friends had planned to come down to San Antonio and see some of our other friends.
Okay.
And I'm like, well, I should cancel the trip. I should save money, but I'm going to go.
Yeah.
And so I come down here, and I had friends that worked for Grunt Style. And so I'm like, I'm going to stay down here a little bit. I think I want to move to San Antonio.
Yeah.
So all the rest of my friends go back home, and I stayed here.
Oh, wow.
I stayed here with another friend who lived here. And she's like, hey, if you decide to move down here, let's move in together and be roommates.
Yeah.
Cool. So I started dropping applications, and one of my friends here at Grunt Style was like, you should come in and talk to the director of social media. Like, you've got a marketing degree. At this point, I was working on my MBA.
Yeah.
You've got experience. Like, you're plugged into the veteran circles. You pretty much know all of these people anyway. So I come in and I talk with Dan Eric, the director of social media here at Grunt Style. And he's like, yeah, let's do it. Let's bring you in.
Very nice.
And he's like, the only caveat though is I need you down here in 30. If you can't move in 30 days, I can't do it. And I'm like, man, 30 days is not a lot of time.
Yeah.
I have a whole condo, a whole wife, kids, everything. So I go back home, and now I've got to find a place to live here and all this stuff. So I go back to Seattle, and I'm in overdrive mode. I'm throwing stuff away. I'm packing stuff up. I'm on the phone, dropping, rental applications down here with me and my roommate, and somehow pull it all together, man.
Wow. In 30 days.
In 30 days.
Yeah.
But again, I said the veteran community is really entitled sometimes, or we're real spoiled brats, but we take care of our own.
Yeah.
And if I hadn't have been plugged into this community and already known people that work down here and already known people in the business and already known the veteran space like I did,
right,
it would not have worked out.
Yeah. Very true. Yeah. Wow. And then you come down here, and what year was that? It was what, 3 years ago?
This is 2021.
21? Okay.
So summer of 2021. I moved. I get rid of pretty much everything I own.
Yeah.
I didn't even have a mattress when I moved down here.
Wow.
And my parents call me up and they're like, hey, we'll drive from California up to Seattle and we'll rent you like a trailer. We'll hook it up to our truck and we'll tow it down to San Antonio.
Oh, very nice.
So I load that trailer up. I load my car up. They get to see my kids, their grandkids, hang out for a couple days. And then they start driving down here. And I'm finishing things up, cleaning my condo, turning the keys over, like all this stuff. And then I start driving.
Yeah.
And, again, because of the space, I had friends all the way down here. So I'm stopping, couch surfing for a night.
Yeah.
And I make it to San Antonio we struggled, me and my roommate struggled to find somewhere down here.
Yeah.
We're both shitty credit, shitty histories,
Yeah.
divorce, like all this stuff. We finally found a place 2 minutes up the road from
no
Grunt Style
kidding.
headquarters.
Wow.
And I get settled in here and I start cruising, man. And
Yeah.
all the pieces just kind of fit together
Yeah.
at the last minute.
And then you start working here, and then at that point, you're obviously doing well, here in the company, and you guys as a company are doing fantastic things as well. So
Yeah,
it looks like things are going well at this point.
things are on the pickup.
Yeah.
I came into Grunt Style with the understanding of like, hey, you are starting at the bottom.
Yeah.
But the potential for growth is
Oh yeah.
limitless. I got the whole talking to like Tim Jensen, co-owner of the company, chief brand officer, started folding t-shirts. And now he owns part of the company.
Yeah.
He's the chief brand officer, like the guy at Grunt Style.
Wow.
And so it was really this inspirational thing of like, you can start at the bottom like I did.
Yeah.
Replying to people's comments on Facebook. That was all I did all day for the first 4 months I was here.
Yeah.
And then, fate being the mistress that she is, there was a lot of turnover in the company and a lot of people left, went on to bigger and better things. And I found myself, Brandon, as the social media team.
Yeah.
For all things Grunt Style.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, the company's like, hey man, you've been grinding this out. You're doing a great job. We're going to promote you. Raise, took over as the social media team lead.
Nice.
Got to bring in people that I thought would be good fits for the company to work on my team. At that point, Grunt Style is standing up the Grunt Style Foundation,
right?
Which it's separate from the company. It's a 501c3 as the LLC on the side. Right. But I'm working with the foundation, doing stuff for like the PACT Act. We were in DC.
That was huge. Yeah.
We were in DC 5 or 6 times for the PACT Act.
No kidding.
Camped out on the steps of the Capitol building.
Wow.
Until they signed the PACT Act into law. Until Congress voted yes.
Wow.
So out there for like 6 days in the middle of summer in DC.
Yeah.
And then, Grunt Style has always done, charitable giving and community engagement and outreach. And so I remember walking into Tim's office one day and I'm like, hey, this is where my heart is at. This is what I want to do. Can I? And he's like, yeah, do it. So I start building these kind of outreach programs that we use. And, there's so many great things that Grunt Style does. And really all I had to do was just connect pieces. So started building those things, getting more involved with the foundation, and it's just taken off from there. And it really is like the sky is the limit.
Yeah, absolutely.
So do a lot of our content stuff, do a lot of outreach, do all of our social media stuff, like just
and I just since I've been in San Antonio, there are an incredible amount of individuals out there doing great things.
There's so many.
It is amazing to me. Like I got to go over to VFW, see what all they got going on. I've interviewed a couple of guys. There's one individual, he owns homes or whatever, and he rents them out to veterans that are trying to get off the street. And he's probably got 3 or 4 homes, something like that. There's several of them out here doing stuff like that. There's tons of stuff out there. It truly is amazing. It's a great community.
The veteran community is so wild to me because at times we can be so toxic.
Yeah.
But there are good people out there doing good things every single day. And
very true.
One of the cool things about the veteran community is these people aren't looking for recognition. They're doing it because it's the right thing.
Yeah.
And, one of the things that I always say, and the foundation here echoes it, is nobody is going to take care of veterans like other veterans.
That's very true. Yeah, I agree with that.
It's not, it's crappy as it is. It's not the civilians' jobs to take care of it. It's not the government's job to take care of it. Should they? Sure. But it's our job to take care of us, and it's our job to police each other.
Yeah.
And so, the shirt that I'm wearing right now, hashtag no more dead friends.
Yeah.
Suicide Prevention Month is coming up in September.
That's right.
And so with the foundation, we did this shirt with the hopes of putting this message out there. No more dead friends.
Yeah.
I'm tired of going to funerals.
Yeah.
I'm sure you're tired of going to
Yes,
funerals.
absolutely.
You ask probably any veteran on the street, and they will all tell you, probably been to 5 funerals since I've been out of the service.
Yeah.
I've lost more friends since we came home from Iraq than I lost in the service.
Yeah.
It's bullshit, man.
Yeah. But you were talking, throughout your life, right, at getting out and the struggles that you had. It is easy to fall into a position where you're like, I don't see an end, right? And it is hard. It is tough to get out of that. But recognizing that there are people out there that did the struggle and now are successful. You were able to come out of that and move on, got out of the alcohol, got out of the drugs, got out of all that stuff. And you're a perfect example of that for people that hopefully listen and say, hey, there's hope. You know?
I was at the lowest I've ever been. Hard, like alcoholic, drinking myself goofy. And it took a lot of bad things to realize, like, man, I am not a 21 or 22-year-old kid anymore. This isn't cute.
Yeah. Yeah.
I got to figure it out. And my kids see that. The youth sees it. Other people see it. If you ever want to break the cycle of substance abuse and alcoholism and drugs or mental health and it being taboo and suicide, you have to do it.
Yeah.
Nobody else is going to do it for you.
Very true. Very true.
So, especially when we look at mental health in the veteran space, like if you or I or any other veteran aren't that kind of shining light of like, hey, this is what you can be with just a small amount of effort.
Yeah.
Then who else is going to do it?
Yeah, very true. Very true. I remember I went years and years and years struggling and having issues, we'll say, just mentally and how to deal with stuff. But my wife, she's like, you need to go talk to somebody. So, I'm talking 22 years or so into my, career. I finally am like, okay, I'll go talk to the doctor. I did. Yes, ma'am. I went in and did my thing. And as I'm explaining everything, this is what my wife is saying, and this is that. Like the doc, like sits and is like, look, I already set you up an appointment with a therapist. Hey, we're gonna talk about medication.
You're good.
We're gonna figure some stuff out. And I'm like, am I that bad off? Like, because to me, I didn't see it. From my, just personally, I wasn't seeing it. But once I went and started talking to the therapist, and they started explaining like, what you're doing and what you're going through isn't a normal, like civilian, what a normal civilian goes through.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, hey, that's interesting.
Have you ever seen the joke online where it's like, what's on a scale of 1 to 0 or 0 to 10, how much pain are you in right now? And the guy goes like, oh, the normal amount.
Yeah.
And the doctor goes, the normal amount is 0. So it's like, okay, how's your mental health today on a scale of 0 to 10? And you're like, oh, it's normal. And they're like, normal is 0. Like normal is good.
Yeah.
So if you're saying I'm the normal amount of messed up, that's not good.
Yeah. And I think for the majority, I won't say all, but a good majority of veterans.
Yeah.
Just like you go into the doc and, how much pain are you in? And you're like, man, I don't know, like maybe a 4 or so. Yeah. And they're like, okay, is that a 4 like a regular person 4, or is that a 4 like that's like a 9 and you're just dealing with it?
You're just taking Motrin and drinking water.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And, mental health is like anything else. You put it off.
Yeah.
And you take a pot and you take it off the burner, but you stick it on the back burner. It's still getting hot, man.
It's true. Yeah.
It'll still boil over. It doesn't have to be full heat on that thing.
Yeah.
And
it eventually happens. Yeah, you're right.
You put it on the back burner and it boils over and you pull it off and you let the bubbles go down and you stay right back on the burner.
Yeah.
And working where I do now is really unlock that. And talking as much as I have with our people at the Grunt Style Foundation and really focusing on mental health and the way that we deal with these things. There's dealing with it and then there's fixing it.
True. Very true.
But it doesn't fix itself. It's not like when you get out of the military, people don't just bang down the door to give you a job. Mental health wellness doesn't just bang down the door to get in. It's something you have to open yourself up to and say, yeah, I'm ready to do this.
Yeah.
There's a lot of programs. There's a ton of programs. There's a ton of things out there. It's just finding the one that is the right fit for you.
Mm-hmm.
But it takes work. You got to put in the work.
Yeah. And it's not easy.
It's not easy.
Yeah.
And that's one of the biggest things is, trying to help veterans understand where they can go, what the programs are, and what the best fit might be for them.
Yeah. And you can drag somebody somewhere and force them to sit down.
Yeah.
But you can't force them to get better.
Nope.
They have to want that.
And sometimes you have to hit rock bottom.
That is true.
And it sucks.
That is true. Yeah.
But there's no better way to be aware of your surroundings than when you're at rock bottom. Let's take it back to the military.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you might not realize how bad the situation is until you find yourself alone in a foxhole and you're like, oh man,
it wasn't that bad.
There are bullets flying from every direction and I am screwed.
Yeah.
And there's only one way out of that.
Mm-hmm.
And it is to fight. Sometimes you got to call in and say like, hey guys, I need some help.
Yeah.
If you were in a foxhole by yourself, overrun by the enemy, you wouldn't just not call in air support.
Right.
Because you don't want to inconvenience them. Well, I could call in for an A10, but I don't want to get those guys up and get them geared up.
They're busy.
No, that is their job. And that is, all these programs, that is their job, is to help you.
Yeah, absolutely.
But you have to be aware of where you're at in the situation you're in and make the call and say, hey, I got to do this.
Yeah, man, that's a good point. It really is. So, after talking your time in the military, your time out, and where you are now, and you look back over, you're doing incredible things already here, but what would you have to say to the listeners out there if there was anything you want to leave them with?
Man, I would say just do it. Whatever it is in your life that you're thinking like, should I do this? Should I not do it? Do it, because life is about experiences. And if you live your life scared to fail or not live up to your full potential, you'll never do it anyway. So get out there, make a decision and run with it. Maybe it's the best one, maybe it's not, but the fear of failing and not doing things right the first time stops so many people from ever fully experiencing their lives.
Very true.
And, the second thing I would say is find your tribe, find your community. It doesn't matter if you're a veteran or not, or still active or whatever. There is community for you. There's a home for you.
Yeah.
And it does, just because you're a veteran doesn't mean you only have to hang out.
Very true.
There are a lot of civilians out there, law enforcement or first responders, and we all share a lot of the same struggle.
Mm-hmm.
Especially now with the world the way it is.
Very true.
We all have so many shared struggles, and we all have so many things in common, more things in common than we don't. So find your community, find your place, and find your purpose.
Yeah.
Because once you do those things will start to fall.
Yeah. I really like that. That's good, man. Well, hey, I appreciate you coming on.
Thanks for having me. It's been a good time.
Yeah, I hope that it inconvenience your weekend too bad here.
Never.
All right, good. But you were talking about what is it? No more dead friends,
no more
right?
Dead friends.
And that's something I end every podcast with, and I talk about suicide prevention, things like that. For everybody out there, if you're struggling, you need help. Don't forget the VA does have some great resources. You can always dial 988, press option 1. You can go to or you can text 838-255. You can also go to veteranscrisisline.net. Click on that chat icon. Any of those options are going to be able to put you in contact with somebody that can help you out. Remember, one veteran life loss is one too many. I care about you. Brandon cares about you. The whole veteran community cares about you. So please reach out for help. And if you're out there, you're not struggling, you're doing well, don't forget your buddies that you serve with. Reach out to them. Ask them how they're doing it. If they need a helping hand, help them out. All right, man. With that, this is going to end it up.
All right.
Thanks for doing this. It was great having you on.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. Absolutely. It was fun. To all the listeners, stay motivated. Change yourself.